Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new Marilyn Manson album, We Are Chaos. Marilyn Manson, metal icon, shock rocker, living legend, who still, to this day, his early recordings of the early 90s, like the Smells Like Children compilation and the Portrait of American Family, weren't for me. I thought he was kind of selling himself short, but had some pretty interesting ideas, which he eventually really took a hold of. As a matter of fact, in the late 90s, he hit a real stride with a trio of impeccable metal albums that really stood the test of time pretty well. The industrial fueled Antichrist Superstar, throttling and button pushing Mechanical Animals, and the very focused and glam rock inspired Holy Wood were really fantastic albums, and listening to them again leading up to this album, I still love a lot of the material there. But ever since, to say the least, it's been a little bit of a weird ride for Marilyn Manson. 2003's The Golden Age of Grotesque had some really great singles and videos, but also had a ton of filler. By the time Eat Me, Drink Me came around, I was laughing more at Marilyn Manson's music than enjoying it. The high end of Low was way too dramatic and just really too fluffy for me. And just thinking about Born Villain is like making me upset and angry. Now, I will say this, as of recently, I feel like Marilyn Manson is having a little bit of a resurgence, a little bit of a renaissance. Pale Emperor, while not as vicious and button-pressing as some of his great albums that came out early in his career, was incredibly sorrowful. It was inspired by like Delta Blues and was easily the most personal album in Marilyn Manson's catalog. And yes, it got a little bit cheesy at times, but overall, I think this is a great album. And while not perfect overall, I enjoyed the bulk of Heaven Upside Down. Now, I've been excited for this album, but sort of let down because a lot of the singles leading up to this have not been that good. Let's chat about this thing. Now, with just how glossed up some of the singles were leading up to this album, I'm genuinely shocked about how focused and grisly and grim Red, Black, and Blue comes off. Between the tongue-in-cheek effects and the very gritty sound to everything, this actually kind of sounds like classic Manson from a mile away. I love the pounding drums and the looming bass. This actually has some really great qualities to it. Not only that, but it's the most industrial sounding that Manson has came off in quite some time. Look, this isn't classic Manson. A lot of this album isn't. But for a fired up, grisly Marilyn Manson in 2020, I'll take this track. This is great. And you know what? It has grown on me quite a bit since it was released as a single. Oh Chase the Dead isn't that bad. It's on the more muscular and raw sound of things, but at the same time, it has that sort of glam rock feel to a lot of his early albums, which I loved so much. A lot of this album does. That glam rock influence comes in once again in this very epic piano. I mean, this might be a hot take, but I think this is a great sound for him in 2020. No, it's not as vicious as he once was, but did anybody really expect it to be? It also kind of follows suit in the same drama and emotion of like the Pale Emperor album. Halfway and one step forward, once again, I don't hate this. I like the drama here. I like the overall sense of emotion and dread. Compare this to some of the ballads that haunt the darker side of this album, and this just comes off so much more powerful, so much more emotional. It's a fantastic sound, and most importantly, it seems reasonable for Marilyn Manson. Like, it seems like in the realm of possibilities. And Infinite Darkness is interesting because this is more or less the sound that he was attempting to do and failed at for years. Gritty, it's sort of industrial. I mean, it's not perfect, but I would much rather listen to this than anything on High End of Low or Born Villain. Not only that, but the songwriting here is pretty great. This is nice. I mean, as far as these tracks go, for a Marilyn Manson album in 2020, it's not bad. But if you were showing up to the show just for a classic Manson album, this is certainly not it. We Are Chaos, where this track was first dropped as a single, I thought it was one of the worst rock tracks I've heard all year, and I still think that. Honestly, when I first heard this, I almost glanced over this album completely. It's absolutely abysmal. It's way too overperformed. And honestly, maybe the most cheesy track that I've ever heard from Marilyn Manson. You know, that glossier, more epic sound to a lot of this album takes it in an interesting direction, but here it just sounds out of place. And I have a lot of the same things to say with Paint You With My Love. This, like, really sums up everything that's really brought him down the last couple of years, and that's the ballads. They're so cheesy. This one is not any better. It's tough to swallow. And let me tell you, with the bluesier, more personal, more emotional side of Manson that we're getting these days, on paper, this doesn't sound so bad. But it's just so overdone, and none of his personality comes out here. And you know what? I'm gonna say it sucks, because that last screamed verse towards the end is some of the best stuff here. It's actually really disheartening to hear how cheesy the rest of this track is. And Perfume is exactly everything I don't want to hear from Marilyn Manson these days. It's moments like this where he doesn't sound like he's taking himself seriously at all, so how am I supposed to? It's just so over the top and ridiculous, and you know what? That's worked for him in the past, but in this setting, no, it really doesn't. And the vocals on this chorus, my God, they're bad. This literally sounds like Marilyn Manson trolling us. And Broken Needle is a finale I feel a lot of the same things for. Look, once again, he's put out some really bluesy, emotional, personal tracks in the last few years. This isn't one of them. This just wipes all of that away and could be used as a good argument against this side of Marilyn Manson. But you know what? There are some late album gems as well. Keep My Head Together is freaking great. I mean, yeah, you can argue that this track is kind of safe, but let me tell you, at this point in his career, I would rather him play it a little safe on a track like this than have some really bad, cheesy, failed experiment. But even just outside of that, Manson sounds great here. His vocals on this track might be his best one here. He sounds so confident. It's so simple yet so effective. It may be my favorite track here. And Solve Coagula is just nothing short of a super grisly, intense, late album, dangerous sounding track. It's on the slower side, but it's just as in your face and ruthless and intense. And honestly, it's times like this that his more personal side comes off even better. There's so much personality here. This is actually a genuinely good sound. So you know what? This isn't the same button-pushing shock rocker of the late 90s. It's far from it. No, this is Marilyn Manson taking on a bluesier, glam rock-inspired sound for the first time in a long time. And you know what? I'm just going to say it. A lot of this album for a Marilyn Manson album in 2020 isn't that bad at all. As a matter of fact, overall, it's got a lot of great stuff here. For me, it's the ballads that really bring this album down. As a matter of fact, I think they could be used as a really good argument against this style of Manson and say that maybe it's time for him to retire, pack it up, and go home. However, you know what? I'm just going to say it. This may be a hot take, and you probably don't agree, but a lot of this album isn't that bad for Marilyn Manson in 2020. I'm feeling a light 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.